Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Complete Amateur Tackles Project Car and is in way too far over his head. In this episode, I'm going to be covering laser cutting in CAD, then I'm going to make an exhaust, and then I'm going to high mount the alternator. Throughout the build, I'm going to get a heap of stuff laser cut. I'm doing this for a heap of different reasons. Basically, I'm really comfortable with CAD and laser cutting. I've done a bit in the past. I was lucky enough to get a summer internship and I spent a heap of time on SolidWorks and I sort of got to use that skill and when I was doing the race car project. So I have spent a fair bit of time making sheet metal, you know, laser and folded parts. So I guess you've got to play to your strengths, and this is probably one of my strengths. I think it's going to save me a heap of time, and any time that I don't spend on the angle grinder is time well spent, in my opinion. I can definitely draw faster on CAD than I can draw, you know, on a piece of paper. I'm pretty fortunate to have had that experience and develop my skill. So I'm going to use it to my advantage, and I'm going to try and do as much laser cutting as possible rather than angle grinding or plasma cutting, because I think it's far more accurate and it doesn't take as much of my time. And to be honest, I don't particularly enjoy angle grinding or plasma cutting either. I mean, if you were to rank the stuff that I like doing in my shed, TIG welding is definitely number one. And then right down the bottom, we have angle grinding and plasma cutting. Everything else in between is basically to prop up my TIG welding addiction. I guess the other thing about this method is I get to iterate on the computer before I put the designs on the car. And I'm going to be doing two things on the computer. I'm going to be doing designs in isolation, which sort of means, like, you know, for an exhaust mount, I'm not going to model the whole exhaust in CAD. I don't think it's worth my time, but I'm going to, you know, put a 3-inch piece of pipe in and then sort of make mounts for that up. And then I've actually got the whole 4580 model in CAD now. I modeled it all by myself. I modeled the rails just using a measuring tape, so there's definitely some tolerance issues there. It allows me to iterate my design a number of times before I actually go to make it. So as opposed to, you know, making a bracket and then not liking it and then having to make it again, I can sort of do all my iteration ideally on CAD. I'm sure there's going to be times where, you know, my CAD design isn't good. I'm going to have to redo it. But the iteration process is a really important part of the design process. It really does allow me to speed up the iteration process in the virtual world. I guess that's another big thing, you know, if you've got experience in building cars and you can just sort of copy your design that you've already done. But for me, I'm designing a lot of it for the first time. So yeah, I've got to really think about it, and CAD allows me to do that, to visualize the geometry. So I do think there are some big pros to doing CAD. Some of the parts that I plan on getting laser cut, I guess my intake, which you see behind me, I'll go through that in a later episode. My fuel tanks, a lot of brackets, and probably some bits and pieces for my canopy. Stuff, complex geometry, stuff that I really don't want to do with a plasma or a grinder. In the past, I've been really fortunate. I've had 24-hour access to a laser cutter, and we've got to use it ourselves without supervision. So, you know, you put something on CAD, bang, you get stuff laser cut straight away. Yeah, there's been no thought of lead times or cost before. It's always been free for me. So this is sort of, I'm stepping into the realm where I'm actually paying for my own laser cutting now. And I've really got to, yeah, give careful consideration to what I actually get cut and what I make at home, because, you know, if there's a small bracket or something like that, I'd obviously just make it rather than waiting for 2 weeks for a laser cutter. So on that, actually, I called up 15 laser cutters last week, and they all quoted me lead times of 2 weeks plus. I managed to find one which was actually really close to home, and the lead time was a couple of days, and they seem really good, and the prices are reasonable. So I have gone with them. I am paying for all this. Some of the challenges with laser cutting is people don't really want to take your small shitty jobs. So I've got a heap of stuff here, like a bulk order of stuff that I got laser cut. Let me be clear, if I had my own laser cutter or plasma table at home, there is no way I would be using an angle grinder or a plasma cutter for cutting. But I don't have one. They're actually really expensive. I looked it up. I was thinking at one point that I would buy one, but they're just way too expensive. I actually thought about making my own one. I think it'd set me back a couple of months, and it's probably not within the scope of this project. So maybe it's a good one to do after I finish this, because it'd be awesome to have a home setup where I could just get little parts cut. Something I thought about was making some brackets at home using my plasma cutter, not having to go to the laser cutter every 5 minutes. So what I did was I cut out some stencils for just common shapes and angles and circles that I thought I might need. And they're just going to be kicking around. That'll come in really handy in the intake episode. You'll get to see that. But yeah, it's not rocket science, just basic geometry. You know those stencils you use as a kid? I've just literally done the same thing. That's the end of the CAD and laser cutting for this episode. I'll be referring to it quite a lot through the next few episodes, especially when I do my intake and tanks. I have been designing and iterating on there a heap. So let's get on to making up my exhaust now, and we'll use some of my laser cut brackets to mount it properly, and then we'll high mount the alternator. So let's get on to what I'm using to do the exhaust. This is 3-inch 1.6 304 stainless steel. I do have a flex plate. I intend to put this under the car just after the dump pipe, and I've got some flanges and some gaskets here so I can put the exhaust into a few pieces and then it'll be easy to assemble and disassemble. I also have a muffler here. All the stainless stuff you see here I got through barratheworld.com, so thanks Mez and Chris for helping me out here, really appreciate it. If you remember back from previous episodes, my friend Matt helped me do the intercooler piping. He's kindly lent me his 3-inch stainless stuff. These are the tacking clamps that we used in the previous episode, so he's lent me them today. And also I've got a cutting die here, so that'll make it way easier to cut straight. I am using a reciprocating saw. I'm using the Milwaukee torch blades, and I'm going to be using some cutting fluid, same as the previous episodes. Okay, so the first step is to cut the excess off this 90-degree mandrel bend. I'm going to try and make it as short as possible that way, so it's going to have a bit of clearance of the firewall. I guess this, I'll have to cut a bit off this as well. This is the corresponding side of the V-band clamp, so I'll get to that now. I cut this as tight as I possibly could. I went and checked the clearance on the car, it looks alright, so I'm going to tack it up. I guess I've never really welded, I mean, you all know my stainless steel welding experience, so I don't have a whole heap. I've never used filler rod while I've been welding stainless, but I think I'm going to need some just in between the flange and the pipe there. So I will give that a crack. I'll obviously practice with some filler rod first on that, and then we'll get to that. And we're all tacked up. Really happy with this. There's probably 40 mil between the firewall and the dump pipe. I've just got to have a bit of a think how I'm going to manage it. Maybe some insulation mat. It is what it is. That's sort of as tight as I can possibly go. So, all right, so the current thought is do a 30-degree bend and then have a flex plate and joiner just in here. And I think it is important to run a flex plate in the exhaust just in case I bump or knock anything, then it'll be able to flex. Also, I'm pretty sure it's going to take a bit of load off the manifold from the weight of the exhaust. A lot of background noise raining currently in Melbourne. Welded up the next piece. I actually did a full pass along this. I just couldn't resist. I don't think there's anything that's going to change there, and well, too bad if it does now. So I've welded up the next piece, and I guess the next step for me is to establish where I'm going to run the exhaust. So I've got a lot of options as long as I don't go too close to the drive shaft. So obviously if I go too close to the floor, then I'll be getting a heap of heat through the floor. But if I go under the chassis rail or too low, then you know I might encounter clashing with stuff when I go off road. So the plan is to keep it above the bottom of the rail, but as far away as possible from the floor, because I just don't want the heat coming into the cabin. Obviously, you know, the exhaust temperatures are really hot, as we've sort of been through previously, but that's the sort of trade-off that I'm thinking about at the moment. Try to put the flex plate in there. I'm not super happy with it. It's too close to the rail and the drive shaft. I'm thinking I'll just put it vertical in here, so I'll have to cut this back and put a little extension in, and then I'll put the flange sort of this area here. Yeah, so I put the flex plate in a new position, way happy with it. It's sort of away from anything, so I don't have to worry about thermal management for it. And I'm just going to do a 60 and then a 30, and then we'll head straight to the back. Almost finished the first section, I should say. I guess there is clearance on the driveline. Obviously, I'm going to have to check full bump again. So I guess my thinking is that I'm going to put a flange just behind here, so then hopefully I'll be able to get that first section out easily and I'll be able to drop down. I'm always thinking about assembly and disassembly of all the parts I make because I know I will have to take it on and off a few times. So yeah, flange about there, so I'll have one section from the flex plate to here. I put a flange just up the cross member so I can get the front section out, and I made sure that the flange is in the right orientation so I can get all the bolts in. This is the last piece of the exhaust, all in place now, sitting on some wooden blocks just for a mock-up. So I haven't actually put the CAD in yet, but it is going to go under there. I do have some space for it. Yeah, I just don't have one, so I don't have one mocked up. But I guess I'm pretty happy with it. I've really tried to think about servicing and nut and bolt position as I go, but it's pretty hard because I don't have a tray on yet. You know, if something's really hard to access, I probably will be likely to change it in the future. Yeah, I'll just finish off with the tacks on everything and then mount it all up, and then we'll do some full passes on it. So I'm folding all the parts myself using Lawrence's folder. I could have got them folded at the laser cutting joint, but it costs extra money. I want some more experience folding parts myself because I think it's going to help my designs in the long run. Thanks heaps, Lawrence, for the chop out. Here we have my laser cut and folded exhaust mounts. I have a few different styles. This is stainless for the exhaust side, and so is this. So I've got two different options, and there's always room to modify them. This is a chassis mount, and I've actually left it way longer than it needs to be, and I'm just going to cut them to length as I need because I couldn't be bothered figuring it all out at the time, and I think this is a good way to go. Okay, so I have tried to make these as strong as possible. You can see there that I've added sort of these angled bits here, and that will increase the second moment of area and it'll stop the bending. So the Landcruiser mount just goes in like that. I lasered some slots, so I've got a bit of freedom to move it around one way. In hindsight, I probably should have made the slots on the other bit go the other way, so then I got a bit more freedom to move. When I pick it up, I have used 3mm stainless for the exhaust side. It is probably a bit of overkill. I was thinking next time I get these done, I would put a little bit of a weight reduction hole on this side here. But then again, I don't want my exhaust falling out, so I don't think it really matters. At the end of the day, it's not a race car. It's got to be strong and tough in the bush. So you can see in all the tabs, I've got these relief cuts now. You definitely don't need them to fold. I buzzed a little cut in with the laser, so then I know exactly where to fold. I have done that sort of with everything. And just to give a reference so I don't have to look at drawings when I'm folding. Okay, so I've got one mount there, one under the cab, and then one at the dump pipe. I am contemplating putting one around this area here just for a little bit of added strength. What do you guys reckon? Do you reckon it needs an additional mount, or do you reckon 3's enough? Let me know in the comments. Okay, so I've taken the exhaust off the car and I get to do full passes on all of it. So pretty excited for this. I guess the difference between this time and last time when I welded the stainless is I'm not purging this time. It is the right thing to do, but a lot of people don't do it and get away without it. So it is, you know, I'm paying for my own gas, and yeah, it does get a bit expensive. So, I mean, much to my mate Matt's disappointment, who is purge 100%. Yeah, I won't be purging today. So I've got a fair bit of welding to do, and then we'll get it back on the car and I'll show you the result. I had a few questions about the filler rod last time I was doing stainless. So you can see here that there's basically no gap in between the two pieces of pipe, and I won't need any filler for that. It's just pure fusion welding. Something like the flange, I mean, sometimes you can get away with it. See how there's a little bit of a gap there? I might need a little bit of filler, but again, I'll try and fusion weld it as much as I can. If you do good prep work, you shouldn't need filler rod. Just in case you're wondering, I filled in all my relief cuts that I did for the laser cutting. Just thought I'd show you the welds. I have tried to do my best with these welds as well. I definitely take pride in my work. I was sort of flying solo with this one. Matt helped me the first time we did the stainless, and yeah, this is all me. So I've tried to do fusion welds, you know, where possible. And then obviously I've had to use some filler at some of the flanges and stuff. You know, first time doing an exhaust, not bad. There's definitely some parts that I had to go over that I wasn't happy with, but I'm happy with the finished result now. So. I haven't gone into the muffler yet, so I have put a muffler in the system. Obviously there are some noise regulations that has to pass, but importantly for me, this is a really thin cabin, and I will put some insulation in it. I am going to be spending a lot of time in the cabin, so I really don't want the loud drony exhaust. And I know, like, I really do enjoy, I mean, everyone loves a good engine rev, right? But I'm going to be spending a lot of time in this thing while I'm driving around Australia. So I don't want it to be too annoying. In case you're wondering why I mounted it on an angle, I mean, there's a heap of space back here where I could have mounted it. I could have put it in here, but my fuel tank is literally going to go, I think, straight under here. I didn't want to bring the exhaust in too far because I think I want a drawer in the middle, and I can't bring it out further because I need to put my tray mounts along this frame rail here. I think, yeah, it's a really good use of space. There's a sort of dead space in this area anyway. On driveline clearances, we did check articulation. So basically we jacked one of the sides up as high as we could. I don't have a high lift jack, which is probably the limiting factor, so I do need to get one of them. But as I did that to both sides, and the drive shaft, obviously it moved a little bit across, but it didn't seem like it was going to come anywhere close to the exhaust. So that is one of the reasons why I've done full passes, because I don't think it's an issue. The other thing is that I am putting a lift in this thing, so it's going to go up, which I think is going to make the clearances better in the long run. Let's have a recap of the mount. So I don't think I've shown you this one before. This is the front one. Now, I agonized over this mount and I hate it so much, but it has to go there, and I've really given it a lot of thought, way too much in fact. So I'd obviously like something underneath the exhaust, so then you don't have to see it. But if I put a corresponding tab on this side of the frame rail, then I wouldn't actually be able to get it in and out. And yes, I have tried out the top and down the bottom and literally just could not do it. So I'm not happy with it, but I think I'm going to have to live with it. I mean, it does its job, which means there's no loading hanging off the back of the turbo. I think it's going to be covered up and I'm not going to be able to see it anyway. Here's the back mount, and I'm also not super happy with it. I wish there was material going up to there. I also think that maybe I could put the rubber mount straight onto the frame rail. So I probably will do that in the future. It's an easy one to fix. So this is the one on the underside of the car, and I am happy with this one. This is designed as intended, basically. I guess on the mounts, so really I did design them in CAD. Only one out of the three I'm actually happy with. I probably will do some redesigning on one of the three, and the other one is pretty much unfixable. So again, happy with the routing, happy with the quality of the work. Now we're done with the exhaust, let's high mount the alternator. For the last few videos, I know that I've been crapping on about trying to keep a stock fan belt set up. So I don't love this alternator position. I've had a few comments on it, and I actually reflected on it over the last few weeks, and I waited until the manifold was done to do anything about it, just to make sure that it would fit, and I think it will. Why don't I like it? Because it's really down low, so just imagine when I'm going through bog holes and stuff, this will fill up, and no doubt it'll break on me in the middle of nowhere with dust ingress and that sort of stuff. So there's a high mount kit. There's a couple of high mount kits available actually. So it moves it to where the power steering reservoir is, which is normally here. I took it off to do the manifold. I obviously want to build this car right. So sometimes, you know, I have to go back on my word and do the right thing, and this is one of those occasions. This is the high mount kit over here, and I got this from Castlemaine Rod Shop. So it comes with a couple of brackets and bolts and whatever I need to install it. It also comes with a comprehensive instruction list and pictures. So that's what it's supposed to look like. Let me do the install now, and I'm really hoping that it does fit with my manifold. It obviously uses a custom belt, so I guess that's one of my big things. It's a rotating component. I did want to keep it stock, but I think this is a better solution in the end. I can just carry some extra belts around. So I think the kit was around $350, but again, it's rotating components. I do not want belt snapping in the middle of nowhere, and this is a tried and tested kit. Could I do it? Could I make this stuff for less than $350? Absolutely, but for the interests of reliability, I'm happy to pay the extra money. So that's my logic on buying this kit as opposed to making something like it. It's been developed, it's had the hard work done for me. High mount alternator install complete. So the kit shifted it from down low, where it was actually sitting probably like 10 or 20 mil away from my frame rail. So I am quite glad that it is up here. It's out of the way now. So this is the power steering pump. It used to be up here with the reservoir, so I will need an external reservoir now. I think I might have ordered slightly the wrong kit because the hose fittings don't fit. So I think I've got the FG one, and even though my my engine is FG, the hose fittings don't fit. So I'm just a bit wary of that. If you are ordering one, make sure you check your pump first. So let's talk about center of gravity for a second. So I've actually moved the alternator up and the turbo up. I'd estimate probably 30 to 40 kilos all up, and I've probably moved it 20 centimeters up. It basically means nothing, but if I did this with every component, then the center of gravity of this car would get higher, which is obviously worse for off-road performance. I mean, I don't think there's a case where a high center of gravity is a good thing. So I think keeping the center of gravity low is a real consideration. So that is why I was sort of bit reluctant to do it at the start. Say I put 100 kilos up high, it could be the difference between rolling a rig or not. So I'm just saying keep everything down low. That's what I'm trying to do. Trying to, but obviously failing. The alternator is all high mounted now and my exhaust is done. What's left for the engine conversion, I've still got to do an airbox and a snorkel to finish off my intake. And then I've got to do my fuel system. There's a heap of little jobs in between as well, like the trans coolers and the rest of the plumbing. I'm not sure if I should do a build log on that or not. It is pretty dry, boring stuff, but let me know what you think in the comments. I'm happy to do one if you guys want to see it. I'm also happy to do an episode on CAD and how I got this thing into CAD if you guys want to see that. So let me know what you think in the comments about that one as well. If you have any other ideas for episodes or stuff that you want to see, just let me know and I'm happy to go into it. If you like this content and you want to see more, don't forget to hit like and subscribe, and I'll try and bring these out as regularly as I can. As I mentioned, I'm sort of doing it as I go, so once every couple of weeks is sort of what I'm shooting for, and when I'm going well, it'll be more frequent. When I'm not going well, it'll be less frequent. Cheers, guys.